staying in a
house, her house.
Her house.
One.
Yeah. This was area.
Yeah, very
Very 3 minutes, 4 minutes.
Some people come in the last minute late.
Naturally, that's life.
It's pretty helpful, people sit in the back.
On the back seat, sit
Was I watching?
One day university.
Oh, no, I was,
Do you think that was a did you think that was a rerun? I think I'd already seen it. I mean, I liked seeing it.
I had to leave early. I wanted to get it. Oh, yeah, I would love it when they lecture and then the demonstrate.
Yeah,
This is what I'm talking about. And then
Right.
turns down talking. And this is what.
right.
Yeah.
He was good. Yeah, he's very good. I think it's just before, but I enjoyed it. Very good.
Get it up on my own.
Yeah, yeah, you can go to their
Where are the
website.
people? We're still members, I assume.
Yeah.
All of us.
Because I get
Emails.
shake a few
Yeah.
people up. Where are the people?
Oh. Say, just allow.
Yeah.
You see it floating around here.
Here.
Go catch it if you see it.
What is this?
In front of my face.
Something I said.
Mhm.
I was looking right at the computer instead of. Yeah. Caroline. Yeah, that's good.
You can tell when you put it.
Right, exactly.
No one will start crying.
I love that lesson. I was trying to teach you. All the reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
I like when you put the security in the back of you.
Okay, now you turn it.
Wait a second.
You're on.
Yeah, we can hear it.
It's live.
Is it time? Yeah, come on up. Come on, friend, just don't throw things. Okay. Isn't there, whoops, this is loud.
No, it's fine.
No, fine.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
You've heard the expression, there was an elephant in the room. We have an elephant here. And I want you to know, she said I could say that in case you think I'm being inappropriate. And first we'll start with Carolyn and then we'll do Bruce then. And we'll start with, what zoo did you come from?
Okay, from Germantown, Tennessee.
And she, if you can't, she has to speak slowly because she does have an accent. Okay.
You're kidding.
Okay, we're I guess I'd better not say what zoo you came from. I should say, where were you born and where did you grow up?
Oh, okay. I was born in Mississippi and then moved to Tennessee. I lived in a small town called Grand Junction, Tennessee. Grand Junction, Tennessee, when I was growing up. It was a small town, but the only thing you had to do was play basketball. Can you hear that?
Slow down.
Slow
Slow
down.
down.
About the only thing I had to do was play basketball. There was no movie theater, there was none of the things that we have today, so it was put the basketball on the floor and dribble. That was about it during my high school years.
Okay, what about family? What's your siblings, or what did your parents do? Or
Okay, I had one brother and one sister, both of them older. I was the baby. They would say in laughingly terms that I was definitely the baby. But we lived on a farm out about 2 miles from town. It was close enough we could walk to town if we wanted to, back in the days of walking. So when girlfriends were there, we'd walk to town and walk back and do like that.
you still can
Still too fast.
say each word carefully because,
Sometimes she
lifts it
up or down.
okay.
Okay, try that. I'll try that.
And do feel free because we don't want to miss anything. Oh, by the way, we took our masks off because when I interviewed Bradley last time, and he was sitting here and I said, do I have to wear my mask? And he said, would you mind not asking me that? So, okay. So, yeah, and you won't mind if they keep telling you, hold it close.
Hold it close. Just raise your hand and I'll try to
Yes,
slow
right.
down.
Okay, what about school? Anything you want to, and if you don't have anything, that's okay too.
Okay, I went to the University of Memphis for 4 years, came in there, and then stayed in Memphis. I couldn't leave. I liked it so well that I stayed and worked there when I got out of school. But I had a nice 4-year stint in college.
Didn't you, you majored in?
I majored in home economics.
And that helped you with the rest of your life, yes?
Well, yes, my first job, I was a home economist with the utility company. So from right out of school, I was liking it, and that was my favorite job. Of all the jobs I had, and it was just, maybe because I was new at it and whatnot, but they gave us little cars to drive. We had it during the day, it had ML, and W on the side, and we did different things. It was fun things, because if, like, a classroom teacher, one of the home economics teacher in town would call and ask for a certain program, we always did it. I don't reckon we ever turned any down. Like at Christmas, we did Christmas crafts for 'em. We did, I know the door decorations, I can still remember some we made, like you take wire mesh and you roll it in a row and you stick it together, and then you stick little dollies in it, all the guys white dollies, and then you can put lights. Ribbons, we showed different things you could put on it to make it different. We did some corn husk wreaths for Christmas, and then we did, I'm sure you all saw the Santa Claus bathroom commode covers where the Santa was on top, and he hid his face underneath. It was in those days. So naturally, we made those for our joke or our laugh at the programs. But we did different programs for different groups, high schools, the home ec group that was the adults there, any group that asked us just about, we did programs. And then we also went into the homes if they called us. They could call us if they had a problem with something, like, I remember one of the problems we had was a lady, it was about appliances. The appliance company was the place that would tell them. They give them our name and phone number and say, if you have any problem, call them. And they can explain to you, even if you just find out the information about how to work it. So one of the calls, and I can remember that we got, was a lady whose clothes were having holes in it. Well, gee, what do? You go out and think, oh, she's pouring bleach in the washer. We know what she's doing. When you get out there, she's not pouring bleach in the washer. She knows about that. She's not doing it. So it took a couple of us on this one. There were 6 of us that did the same job. One person, we couldn't figure this one out. So we all analyzed on this one. So we called her back and said, can we take a sample of the clothes? And she said, yes. So we sent it off to a company and we said, can you tell us what's causing this? And all the company could send back, yes, it is a chemical burner. Well, you kept saying, and then her son came in as we were there, and we figured out from him what job he had it was. Where he worked, he was using chemicals at work, and he was splashing it on his clothes, and it was ruining his clothes as well as some of the others. So of course, in that case, all we could suggest is you need to buy a plastic apron for him to wear at work. But that's the kind of problems we had. But it was fun getting to decide, hey, what's the problem? What's going on here? And that was my favorite job of all.
If I miss something, I have to.
Too fast again, I'm sorry.
Would you say all that again? No. I have one hearing aid missing, so I hear sound but not distinction. So if I ask you a question twice, it isn't that I wasn't listening. Now, did you mention any other jobs that you had?
No, I didn't, but I had several different ones. They were just different ones. When my husband went back to get a degree, he went to Mississippi State. And when he went back to get his third degree, I worked as a graduate clerk in the office. Graduate clerk. Worked as a graduate clerk at Mississippi State University.
Did you say he gave you the third degree?
No, he was working on his third degree.
Okay.
Couldn't get him out of school. He just kept going. But then after that, my child was born and I stayed home for several years. And then when she started to preschool, I went back and got my master's. And then I taught at the university. I taught home economics while at the university. And then after that, I decided to be a realtor so my husband could keep her on the weekends while I was working and I could keep her through the week. And that worked pretty good too. So I just did different things.
Slow down. Slower. She's excited, you know.
No, I thought this way all the time.
Okay, now you said that you were a figure skater, didn't you?
No way.
You didn't like figure skating?
No way. Couldn't stand figure skating or ice skating.
Oh my gosh, that's the other one. Sorry about that. What did you? You did have hobbies and there.
Okay, you asked me to bring some today, but this is in
You will love seeing all the work, the knitting that she has done. Because it's very unusual.
Well, no, not that much. I just brought a crochet table mat that I had brought with the napkin rings to match and the little circles that you put your drink on. And then I brought some other napkin rings that I cut out of felt and made there also. Napkin rings, the little felt things you could see there. And then I just some crochet that I had used. I used it to make vests. I used it to make, this was the pattern I used to make vests, to make Africans, whatever I made. This was a pattern I used a lot of times that I brought the little sample from.
Okay, well, how about husband? Where did you meet him and how long did it take to no, never mind, just how did you meet him?
We met at church. We both went to the same church, and he had asked us out after church to go to, back then it was Shawnee's, is where you went to have dessert. And so I met him and we started dating then and dated for about 9 months before we got married. We got married. I met him in January and we got married in September of the same year.
So you knew him quite a while before you dated him then?
Yeah, he was.
When did you move here?
Well, let's wait for a sec. Yeah. I want to wait till questions because I'll forget where we're going. I have a perfect memory, but sometimes it slips. Go ahead.
I forgot what I was saying.
I was saying with your husband.
You're talking about the diner, I think you want to go have ice cream in, right?
I can't. hear you.
Shawnee's Mexican, it was strawberry pie back then. Shawnee's strawberry pie was what was the fad during the 60s. That's where we went, right? Instead of Shawnee's strawberry pie. And I was married to him for 52 years before he died.
You said that you had to move several times, and that was kind of a problem with your daughter, especially later.
Well, no, not really. we were in Memphis when we got married. We moved to Mississippi State when he got his doctorate down there. And then after he got his doctorate, we moved back to Memphis, lived inside Memphis for a while, and then we moved to Germantown, which is an outskirts of Memphis, and lived there. So I really didn't move that much.
Okay, you had
I have one daughter.
grandchild, yeah.
I have one daughter who lives in Santa Cruz here. That's why I'm out here, is because she lives so close. And then I have two grandsons. One's grown and one is now 16. And I did bring a picture of him when he was a little bit younger. That's the only one I could find that was appropriate to bring over here. And I told Kate, so she said, tell this story. He's now 16. A couple of weeks ago, he was riding his bike home at lunch from work for lunch, and he ran across the railroad track and flipped himself over his bike. And once he flipped himself, he has 12 stitches, had to replace, put his teeth and put in new teeth. I said, he's got false teeth like me now. You know, here he is 16 now with his false teeth, broke his wrist. But somebody called, used her cell phone, his cell phone, and called my daughter to come and get it. So she grabbed the ice pack and ran up there, put him in the car. They got to the bridge, and in Santa Cruz, to get to the emergency room, you have to go over the bridge. Some guy had decided to jump, so the police would not let them by. They sat there for 2 hours with him bleeding. And she finally got up and walked to the policeman and said, what about calling an ambulance? Well, about that time, ambulance came up. They turned the ambulance around. They didn't let it even go across. So they got out of their car and walked the 0.8 of a mile to the emergency room. She said the only advantage of it was there was nobody there when they got there. They flat got in because nobody else could get to the emergency room either. They went back about 2 weeks after his accident to the railroad station, and they have put up 6 signs now around that spot showing a kid going over his bike and saying, be careful.
Should have said something about the happy, really, that, what if?
It turned out well.
It turned out, it could have turned out a lot worse. What about travel? You said
Oh,
you went to Japan, did you?
yes, you said my favorite trip, and it was Japan. We got to go to Japan one year, and it was great. Of course, I know now how some people feel when you don't understand a word anybody's saying to you. If we had not had an interpreter who met us at the airport, took us to where we were going, picked us up every morning, I would have been in sad shape because I had no idea what people were saying. And as you know, in Japan, well, you may not, but in Japan at that time, the customs were different. To go to a normal public restroom in Japan, it was men and ladies using the same restroom with no stalls. So the interpreter had to take me anytime they were near a hotel or something. He would say, well, we're stopping here for you to go to the restroom, because the hotels weren't fixed that way. But that's some of the things, but it was really an enjoyable trip. They took us up to a vacation place near there, which was fantastic. It was just great. I love the bullet train. If you've ever ridden on a train, that it's much faster than an airplane. I wish we had it in the USA, because that bullet train is something else to get you to space in no time.
Right before we started, you had another thing you wanted to talk about. Was it Elvis? Was it?
Oh, Jesse, what our guests wanted to do when they came to Memphis, and I said, well, the main thing that we always got a request for, let's go see Elvis's house. So I've been to Elvis's house quite a bit. I can remember when they first opened it back, I guess it was probably in the 70s. it was really tacky, if you want to know the truth. I used to say it was tacky, it was gold, it was everything, and it was the original house. I mean, you walked in and you saw it and you went out. Now, in the last years, they have redecorated and they have added stuff like they brought in a plane, that says Elvis's plane now, and they brought in horses that they say were Elvis's horses. Well, Elvis has been dead how many years? Could that be his horses, right? I mean, so now it's a lot, it's been a lot changed, but that was where everybody wanted to go, was to see the Elvis Presley house.
Okay, well.
Okay, I will mention one thing, so that when he first moved there into where the house is now that you visit, that's when I was working at MLGW. I even got to go in the house back then because the maid needed some help with her washing machine. So, it was in Elvis's house way back when. What did I start to tell? I forgot. Oh, in the paper, they would show it and you could see it. His mother actually, literally, he bought that house for his mother. His father had always lived on a farm and she liked things. And you could go by and you could see her feeding the chickens or whatever she was doing. It was a great big lot. So the house itself had a lot of appeal for people to drive by and see what was going on that day.
Well, let's get to how you got to the terraces.
Well, I have a daughter in Santa Cruz and she thought it was time for me to pack up my 4,200 square foot house and move from it, that it was just a little bit too much for me, or maybe a lot too much for me, but I did pack up and move here.
You went?
I did pack up and move to here.
And did you know people here before you came?
Now, so,
Now you do.
now I do. I know a lot of people now, but I did not know one person.
And where do you live here at the terraces?
I live in L down near the garden.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna save questions till after, if that's okay with everybody. And we'll do, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
Don't go too far. As you'll be here for questions. Okay, and here is Ruth Ann Stoltzman. And when did you arrive here?
5 months ago.
5 months ago. She claims she's one of the youngest, but I don't think so. How old are you?
I'm 85.
No. How many are younger than 85? Okay.
Good.
That
Now
blew,
I'm the old.
that blew her story. Okay, so where did life start for you?
I grew up in a little town in central Wisconsin, Marshfield, right smack in the center of the state, little dairy community of 35,000 people. And when I go back now, it looks the same. A few more people, but Main Street is still the same as it was.
This is Wisconsin, right? Anybody here from Wisconsin? No? Okay. Okay. Oh,
That's good.
all right, and tell us about your family.
I'm the oldest of 4 children, and I have 2 brothers still living. One's still in the hometown, and my father had a radio repair shop, and so we had one of the first TVs in the city. He specialized in car radios because he was a little guy. He could crawl under the dashboard to remove the radios from inside the cars. My father was 5'3". My mother was 5 foot. I didn't have a chance.
Okay, what was growing up like? What,
Well-
you had 3 siblings, huh?
Yeah, well, I had a brother that was just a year younger than me, but then my dad didn't want to be drafted, so they had 2 more kids. And then along came Sarah and Douglas, and they were about 6 years younger than us. Let's see, I grew up with ice skates on my feet. That's where she was talking about figure skating. I loved figure skating. I wanted to be Sonia Henny. But we had no instruction in the town. This little town had nobody that could teach me anything. I never learned how to spin real good. I could jump around and do a swan and do some of the fancy steps, but this spinning that they do nowadays completely boggles my mind, because I can't imagine how they get up off the ground like that and spin. So I wanted to be a figure skater. Eventually, I went to college. I was good in math and art. And in those days, in the 50s, that spelled architecture. So I thought, I'm going to be an architect. Well, lo and behold, the architects around there did not hire women. They wouldn't let us apprentice or do anything. I could be an office staff, that was all. So I became office staff. Although one of my first jobs, you'd love this, I was a car hop at a root beer stand. You know how you anchor the tray on the side of the car with the root beer and the hamburgers. And I got a whole 35 cents an hour. That was one of my first jobs.
How much?
35 cents an hour. I made a lot of money.
I started working at 42 cents an hour. I was in a higher job than you. What about education? Any comments or remembrances?
Well,
that you should mention?
I went to Lawrence College in Appleton, Wisconsin, majoring in art with a concentration in architecture. And that's when I found out that I was in the wrong school. But 3 years later, I met my husband, Burnell. He was a resident, grew up in the same town that I did, but he was 7 years older than me, so we didn't know each other. Our parents knew each other, but Bernie and I did not, because his classmates were my babysitters. And I met him, we were both home from school for a summer job, working in a pea cannery. He was out in the factory and I was in the office, and he found a lot of excuses to come into the office. But we were too busy to really get to know each other then, but we corresponded by mail. His brother was a year younger than me, so we sometimes made a threesome and went to some of the local dances or roller skating, things like that. Bernie graduated and
Did he ice skated too? Your husband was an ice skater?
No, roller skating, but he didn't enjoy that, but I did. But he kind of chaperoned his younger brother, like we were triple dating. Let's see, then Bernie graduated and went out to the East Coast for a summer job. And I was back for my 3rd year of college, and we pretty much courted by mail, did a lot of letter writing. And
He traveled, did he?
he went,
Did he move around a lot?
No.
He was tell me again, because I'm not hearing everything. Radio repair, was it?
what?
Did he do repair work or something?
No, Bernie was headed for the seminary. And
Oh, it was your dad who was, yeah, okay.
yeah, but at the end of the summer, Bernie was supposed to go into the seminary. And we had other ideas. He went back to the school, to the seminary. I went back to my college and began instruction in the Catholic faith. And without corresponding at all for that week, he left the seminary, went back to the University of Wisconsin to get his electrical engineer degree. He had started it earlier, which is a long story. But I started my lessons in the Catholic faith. And at the end of that week, we were free to talk to each other again and made our plans.
What really happened is you lured him away from the seminary.
Oh, gosh, yeah. He would have been a teacher, and he would have been a miserable teacher, but he was a good electrical engineer. And we were married in September of the following year. He had a job out on the East Coast for the whole summer before we were married. Once again, courting by mail. And he was out in New Jersey. I was working in the pecannery for that last summer. And we planned our wedding for September. And then he had one semester to finish at the University of Wisconsin. So we got married, found ourselves a little apartment at Madison, Wisconsin. And he finished his degree and I was working. And got my first taste of computers because I was the teletype operator at the Sears Roebuck store. You know, when they get orders in, the orders had to go onto punch tape. And then the punch tape was fed into another machine that sent it to the headquarters and the fulfillment centers. And then the packages came back to the store. So I had to be very accurate typing all of those orders that went in for Sears. And that was great fun. At the end of the semester then, we headed for New Jersey where his job was waiting for him again. He got his degree in electrical engineering. And by then I was a few months pregnant. So we bounced all the way out to New Jersey and lived there for about a year. And that's where our number one son was born, Avon by the Sea.
Where was this place?
New Jersey, Avon by the Sea. It was about half a block away from the ocean. And it was a beautiful place. Lots and lots of retired people living there. And when I was 21, I looked like I was 12. So I made sure that my wedding ring was very visible because my pregnancy was very visible. And
Well, we better get to what you're doing here at the terraces, because I can tell you, I tried to get her to bring a picture of her apartment here.
my
And
office,
well, first let's talk about did we cover everything?
well, no, that was number one son. We moved around a lot.
Oh, that's right, and you had a daughter who was a California girl.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I have 7 children. And we moved from New Jersey to Long Island. You've heard of Levittown. And then we built a little house out farther out on Long Island, East Northport, and lived there for about 5 years. And then we moved to Minnesota, to St. Paul area, Maplewood, and lived there for about 9 years. It's hard to keep track because you're moving around a lot when you're first married. And they were living in Minnesota when Bernie was working for Sperry Univac, and they bought a little company called ISS, Information Storage Systems, out here in Cupertino. And they wanted somebody from Univac to come out and teach these people in the little company how things were done in the big company. And Bernie threw his hat in the ring, and we moved out here with 7 kids. Took 2 moving vans, and we filled them up and bought a house in Saratoga because we wanted to be in the Cupertino School District. And that's where we lived for 45 years.
But you said your children weren't that eager to come out, were they?
Oh, my number one daughter did not want to move. She didn't want to leave her friends. And she conned her father into buying stereos for her bedroom. And Then she agreed to move to California. But yeah, it was bribery, pure and simple. When we left Minnesota, do you remember the movie Airport with the snowy blizzard? We left Minnesota in a roaring blizzard in February. And we moved out here. The sun was shining. We got off the plane, it was 55 degrees. My kids took off their shoes and never wanted to put them back on again. It was beautiful, beautiful California. That 15-year-old girl turned into an instant California girl. She's a blue-eyed blonde, she just took off. And number one son was in the St. Paul Scouts Drum and Bugle Corps. So he was kind of hesitant to move too. But we said, Richard, they've got drum and bugle corps out in California. And he said, Santa Clara Vanguard? Yep, he came out here and immediately joined the Vanguard. I see a head nodding. I'm glad some of you know what it is. And so we became a Vanguard family, and eventually 4 of my kids marched in the Corps. And one of our first meetings of the Booster Club, I volunteered to help sew uniforms. Well, at the next meeting, they said, oh, we've got a new uniform chairman. Teresa's mother volunteered. What? How many Teresas do you have? Oh, just one. And that was me. So I became the uniform chairman, ended up traveling cross country with the Corps. I even drove a big 5-ton truck from one coast to the other, stopping here, there, and everywhere as the drum corps stopped for their shows along the way. That was an adventure. It took up a lot of our time though.
Didn't you say you were good at sewing and you
Yeah,
sewed the kids?
I sewed everything for the family, and I helped sew a lot of those uniforms and the flags. And but I sewed everything for the family, everything from swimsuits to snowsuits.
I wish you had some samples here.
Yeah, well, my eyes kind of gave out. After we moved here, I still continued sewing, but I decided, hey, I could earn a little money. I started sewing reverse applique for some shirts of a local woman who was making these Western style shirts and selling them to various big stores around. And so I was making a little money sewing. And then after doing that, I decided I'd like to try machine embroidery. And I bought a commercial embroidery machine, the big thing. And this was before computerized embroidery. And so I did hand embroidery with everything in little hoops, moving it around under the flying needle. That was very hard on my eyes. I ended up sewing an awful lot of names on warm-up suits. And when my eyes gave out for that, it was just too stressful. The home computers started to be hitting the market. And we bought one of the first IBM PCs for our family. And it was such a hit, we had to have a sign-up sheet. Everybody could have 5 minutes or 15 minutes on the computer, and then they had to let the next kid take part in it. It got our 15-year-old son away from the television set for the first time in his life and using his head with his computer. He was programming little songs and games on the computer. And
your kids must have had a lot of fun together with 7 of them.
oh yeah, well they fought a lot.
Well, that's what's
7, yeah, and somebody asks me, what's it like raising 7 kids? And it's just routine. They take care of each other. The oldest helped the youngest ones. My oldest daughter, she helped raise the little ones, changing diapers, feeding them, the whole works. And they take care of each other. When you're cooking something, you just cook more. You can make a bigger pot of soup, spaghetti sauce. I would have a pot of spaghetti sauce on the stove, and everybody going past it would put their own secret ingredient into it. Sometimes it was a bottle of beer, sometimes it was some herbs or spices, but everybody learned to cook and we had fun, yeah.
It sounds like you had a lot of fun as a family.
In Minnesota with the winters, we built a skating rink in the backyard. And I finally got ice skates back on my feet and taught my kids how to skate. So we flooded the backyard and made our own rink. And we learned that when you turn off the water, when you're spraying the field, you have to pull the hose in very fast or it's frozen by the time you get it back to the door. So we would let the water trickle a little bit and not turn it off until we got the hose in the house. Otherwise, you don't have a hose anymore, it ruptures, it freezes.
So it was an actual skating rink.
We had a skating
How
rink.
big?
Yeah, we had to flood it with a hose. It's a lot of water, you know.
Of course, for us out here, especially me in San Francisco, I can't imagine that.
Well, in Minnesota, we have a lot of lakes, but that wasn't close enough.
Backyard.
Wasn't close enough, no.
Okay, let's get to your business or we're gonna.
Okay, yeah, well, after the machine embroidery, when we got the computers, I was one of the kids, I had to sign up, or I could use it after they went to bed. I learned word processing. One of the first programs I had was making mail labels, a little program called Easy Label, I still remember that. And then I could, well, for the Vanguard had a newsletter, but we did it using the old-fashioned mimeograph machines, when you had to type very accurately with a typewriter on these stencils. Okay, but I used this new computer to make the mail labels. And I was as hooked by the computer as the kids were. So as we developed more programs, we had the first computer without any programs. It had an adventure game and nothing to really do with it. We did finally have WordStar. That was the first word processor. And I mastered that pretty quick. And then when my youngest daughter was in junior high school, the kids said, let's see if mom can get a real job. So I went out and I did word processing at a few companies. And at one company, they said, well, we don't want to use WordStar anymore. We're going to use WordPerfect. So I had to learn WordPerfect. And then at that point, I was teaching my employers how to use WordPerfect. It was just a natural for me. I loved it. I loved the computer. I loved some of the little graphic programs that they were developing to learn how to make pictures sharper or different colors. For me, it was a toy, and I just loved it. So today, after the kids all grew up and I was laid off from my last job of word processing, I opened my own business. I just came home and continued doing desktop publishing. And that's what I'm doing now.
So you still carry on your business
I
today?
still have my own business. I brought it here to the terraces with me. In my one-bedroom apartment, one whole side is my desk and desk and desk. And the other side is big shelves holding all my paper and my extra materials and extra machines. I've got a paper folder. I can do spiral binding, laminator. Anything that Kinko's can do, I can do. I have gone through a variety of printers, and I right now have a huge, my printer is as big as that table.
Believe me, it is.
It's a Xerox a color laser printer, and I can print the tabloid size paper, double-sided color, so I can do big posters or newsletters. I'm still printing newsletters for a number of companies, local in Saratoga, and whatever. I volunteered to help with things here at the terraces, but they've got a system much bigger and better than mine. And so
So
I'm-
you do all this at home,
in my office, yeah, at home,
but with,
at the
with
terraces.
companies outside.
Yeah, well, I work for companies and individuals and organizations. Like I print the newsletter for the Saratoga Foothill Club, for the Knights of Columbus. Some things I put together from scratch, do the page layout. Some I just print. They send me a PDF file, if you know what that is. They send me a file that I can print. So that's all I have to do is print it. And like I said, I can do it cheaper than Kinko's.
Okay, well, you have some samples of.
Yeah, I brought samples of some of my work, just a
And
few.
don't you have some pictures of your family?
No, I have them in my office.
Okay.
I didn't
You
bring
didn't
any,
bring any
I
pictures?
didn't bring any pictures of my family.
Not even of the whole seven,
No,
they didn't fit, huh?
I have a picture that was taken at our 50th wedding anniversary of all 26 of us, including spouses and grandchildren. Yeah. Wilkes,
One day at lunch, I was mentioning the piano that's in the card room here. And, oh, I can do that. You can do that? Oh, sure, come on, let's do it right now. So she marches me into the card room in front of the piano, the scroller piano, and you go over there.
Wilkes wanted to learn how to operate the player piano in the game room. And I had one when I was a kid. So I had a vague idea of how it worked. You had to put the rollers in and start them up and push the right buttons. And I figured it out, and Wilkes is delighted. He goes in there every noon and plays the player piano. So if you ever need a concert, we can do it.
And she knew how to do it right off the bat.
Well, I'm pretty mechanical, I can figure things out, yeah.
Okay, well, let's start with some, because we're kind of running out of time. I'm thinking about some questions. Yes,
I have a comment. I needed some Hanukkah cards, so I came and visited Ruth Ann. She gave me a large selection to choose from. And I chose something that I was happy with, and the cards came out beautifully, and her price was very reasonable.
do you want to talk about your price?
I printed Hanukkah cards for her.
How many?
Oh, a dozen, yeah. I have one box of note cards that I have printed. I do these sometimes just to give away as gifts. And I brought my brochures so you can see the long list of crazy things I do. Basically, if you've got an idea of something you want to make, I can make it work. I solve problems. I can figure out how to make it work.
So in the brochure, then you also talk about the cost?
No, I don't have costs in there, but I basically charge 5 cents for a black and white printed page, a letter page. That compares to 10 cents at Office Depot. And I print color pages for 30 cents. And I know that Office Depot and places are about 50 cents at least for a
And
single page.
what about your time?
My time, well, if I'm going to do a lot of layout, I charge $40 an hour. And that usually ends up about $100 for a newsletter. But that's cheap.
Okay, any other, a couple, and then because we need to get to the elephant in the room too, for questions.
Do you play the piano?
No,
We-
I don't play the piano. I brought along some bookmarks here that I cranked out this morning, just for you to take home, just for fun. And my brochures and business cards. I created those all myself. So that's just a small sample of what I can do. And my trifold brochure explains some of the other things.
Just to give me an idea, how many of you have questions for either one? Would you raise your hand? Okay, because what you can do is ask questions when you come up to talk with them afterwards. And you could just, both of you can be up here around the table. It's, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so come on up then, and you can ask, unless is there any question that everybody would like to hear, do you think? Anybody?
How did you ever come to the terraces?
Oh, okay.
How what?
How come you came to the terraces?
Well, about 15 to 20 years ago, Bill Rasmussen invited my husband and me to come here to have lunch with him. So we got a very brief introduction then. And my husband and I agreed we would like to retire here. Well, he didn't make it. He died in January.
This year.
This year, yeah. But I was rattling around in the house. The kids were all gone. My grandchildren are all grown up. So packed up, the kids helped me empty the house, sold the house, and moved here to the terraces.
Where was your house and how did you sell
We were in Saratoga, northern Saratoga, and we used a realtor. And I moved here and then sold the house.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, thank you, thank you all for coming, and come up and visit us up here.
Go get some bookmarks, we're all readers. Yeah, so I said.